all of this being said, if we come back to the executive level, 40% of all executives who are hired into those positions do not make it, meaning out of 10,
40%.
4 are going to be a failure, which is a big question as to why that is. And there's an entire chapter dedicated in my book around what are the top 10 reasons for executive transition failure, and how come that some organizations, despite leveraging some of the best instruments out there, still get it wrong when it comes to not just hiring the right executive, but also to give them a leg up as and when they are hired, so that you are supporting them as soon as they have been hired to be successful in the role. So that became kind of the raison d'être, or the reason why it took me 7 years to write this wonderful book, because I really wanted to dig deep in
I like the way you
research.
have actually broken down the process of interview and making sure that, the qualification process goes through a rigorous channel before he comes and, and we take him as an executive position. Uh, Following that, how do you basically evaluate someone who's even internally in the organization promoted? He was handling maybe he was working for maybe a decade, and then he knows all the functions of the business, and we find he's an ideal candidate to basically promote. In that promotion, what will be the gap, or what will be the test that you will conduct
Yes.
to make sure that he's the right fit?
So 25 years ago, when I was hired to work for this wonderful company called Adidas,
Okay.
that was the way, right? So you had a job description or a role profile that had laid out what are the criteria for success and what are the competencies and the skills that you would need to see in that candidate in order to either promote them or hire them into the position. Didn't really distinguish between internal and external, because ultimately you need the right person in the right role. Now, fast forward 10 years on from there, that wasn't good enough anymore, because see, the world is moving at such a fast pace that what used to be a successful finance director, let's say, candidate or head of finance, you still may go and hire the correct person, but 2 to 3 years down the line, they may not be the right person anymore for that position.
Yeah,
And so
because of
that's
the dynamics changing.
how the world is moving, how the technology is evolving, how the culture of the organizations are evolving, because of the new generations entering the workforce, and they have very different expectations than what I used to have when I, as a Gen X, entered the workforce, and before me, the baby boomers and so on. So that kind of brings me to the idea of hiring for potential, not for performance. So again, at the time I was working for Adidas, hiring for performance was enough, because it was fairly foreseeable. The world was still, still in flux, but not quite to the extent as we see today. So if I needed a head of finance, I would just make sure that we hired the best person for this position. But already a few years down the line from there, when I was working for another company called British American Tobacco, or BAT, what we used to conduct as HR leaders was to hire for potential, meaning, yes, I'm hiring for a head of finance for a small division today, but in an ideal world, that same individual that I'm hiring right now into this middle level position has what it takes to become a CFO
Wow.
5 to 10 years down the line. So that means that you're not just assessing for competency and fit, but you're now assessing for what is the stretch potential that this candidate brings along, and what is the likelihood that they will be able to perform 2 grades or 2 positions above the position I'm hiring them into right now a few years down the line. And in order to do that, it takes a different skill, and obviously also different methodology to go about interviewing and assessing for
So do you
future
feel that
potential.
behavior also plays a very important role?
Absolutely, yes.
More than accomplishment,
Yes.
especially in terms of leaders, for leaders?
Yes, but it all comes down to the cultural beliefs of that organization. If they're traditional, if they're old school, if it's still founder owner led, and they don't want to change the culture, the rhythm, the pace, they may not believe in that. They may believe in how many certificates can you produce on your resume, or how many degrees you have, successfully completed. But it really comes down to the beliefs and the culture and the fit for the organization, which is one of the reasons, funnily enough, why 40% of executives are a failure. One of the top 10 reasons for failure is culture.